Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today I will present to you for our group's assignment the effect of pandemic COVID-19 on economy in Malaysia. For Microeconomics, AFT1093. Our lecturer's name is Miss Nur Nadia binti Nordin. We are from group 15. Our group members are Arif Irwan bin Rosli, Arif Fakrul bin Arsaad, me myself Muhammad Hakim bin Nasrul Haku, Nurul Nabiha binti Alias, Nurul Syafiqah Hazwani binti Cik Zainuddin, and Siti Nur Fahana binti Roslan. Introductions. COVID-19 has hit the world at the beginning of years 2019. This pandemic, originally from China, has caused a lot of damage to the countries all around the world. Malaysia's government has decided to make a total lockdown and movement control order (MCO) to prevent the pandemic to spread. Almost all sectors were affected with the announcement by the government and lost source of income. Malaysia's government has all out to stabilize the nation's economy.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. My name is Arif Irwan bin Rosli. My metric number is A20A1276. So I would like to presenting my part, the economic activities in Malaysia. Let us start it. Malaysia has successfully made a variation of its economy from one that was initially agriculture and commodity based, and now Malaysia be the playing host to robust manufacturing and service sector, which have gained up the country to become a leading exporter of electrical appliance, spare parts and components. In addition, the economy of Malaysia is fourth largest in Southeast Asia and 38th in the world according to the International Monetary Fund. Next is the manufacturing sector in Malaysia. The manufacturing sector, including electronics, has emerged as the leading economic sector, followed by agriculture, livestock, forestry, and fishery. The retailing and hospitality sector are in the economic Malaysia too. The production and export of main industries such as palm oil, tin and rubber have contributed significantly to socio-economic development of the country. Malaysia leads the world in the production of rubber and is one of the biggest producer of cocoa, palm oil, tropical hardwoods, pepper and tins. In regards to social economic development, the forestry sector remains an important sector. But however, COVID-19 pandemic has a massive economic impact on Malaysia, particularly on vulnerable households. After have some revise on national poverty line in 2020, there are 5.6% of Malaysian households are currently living in poverty. This low-income group remain particularly vulnerable to economic shock, as well as increase in the cost of living and gaining financial obligation. Income inequality in Malaysia remain high relative to other East Asian countries, but is gradually declining. So that's all from me. Next, I will give it to Syafiqah Hazwani.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Syafiqah Hazwani binti Cik Zainuddin. My metric number is A20A2248. I will talk about impact of COVID-19 the economic growth. The COVID-19 pandemic in Malaysia has had a significant impact on the Malaysian economy, leading to the devaluation of the Malaysian ringgit and the decline in the country's gross domestic product. The pandemic also adversely affected several key sectors, including entertainment, markets, retail, hospitality, and tourism. Besides a shortage in goods and service, many businesses had to cope with social distancing and lockdown restrictions, which affected their operation and revenue. In Malaysia, the effect of these China shocks may be dreadful. The Malaysian economy is amongst the most highly exposed economy in the region due both Chinese demand and supply. China is Malaysia's number one trading partner, a large source of foreign investment, and its top tourist source outside of Asia. According to the Institute of Strategy and International Studies, our Malaysian market is more susceptible to slowdown of China's supply and demand, especially as they are our number one trading partner, the major source of foreign investment, and a top tourist source outside Asia. In some, the nation forces a better production growth following the increase of import raw material and continuous growth in investment of machinery and equipment that lead to a healthier perspective for future potential economic momentum. So, higher commodity price, which translate to a growth of 2.3% of GDP in nominal term, will increase income per capita and encourage household consumption. So that's all for me about the impact of economic growth during COVID-19. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Siti Farhana binti Roslan and my metric card number is A382274. So, the impact of COVID-19 to the unemployment in Malaysia is for most countries around the world. The year 2020 was a difficult one. Aside from the airline business, the pandemic had an impact on a number of Malaysian industries. In Malaysia, LEO referred to people who are covered by the employment insurance system, EIS, who have lost their job, but it includes forced retirement, voluntary resignation, contract expiration, and layoff due to the misbehavior. The implementation of the movement control orders since the 18 March 2020 has resulted the number of LEO to drastically increasing in tandem, peaking in June and July 2020, as can be seen in Figure 1. That's what we can see based on the figures since 2018 to 2019. Monthly loss of employment in Malaysia slowly increased. So, for the example, monthly loss of employment for January 2018 below than 2,000, while January 2019 higher than 2,000. Compared to 2020, since May 2020, monthly loss of employment abruptly increased from 6,000 to 8,000, and June 2020 was more than 18,000. Obviously, this is because affected from movement control orders since 18 March 2020. Thank you.
Next is the impact of COVID-19 to the inflation rate of Malaysia. Inflation rates occur when the values of goods and service price increase over a period of time, thus resulting in a decreasing in purchasing power for consumers. COVID-19 has impacted the economy of Malaysia in 2020 and the inflation rate shows it. The lockdown in mid-2020 has few impacts to the inflation rate, like the declining number in the aggregate demand, disruption in the supply chain because of physical distancing to ensure the safety of the employee. For a country, inflation rate increase and decrease via Consumer Price Index, or CPI for short, and should be maintained around 2% rate, as much higher rate can be bad for consumer as goods and service price may not be affordable for low-income consumers. From the table above, we can see that Malaysia average CPI index has shown a decrease of 1.2% in the year 2020, but has seen an increase in 2021 by 2.3%. This shows that consumers in Malaysia have less purchasing power in 2020 as COVID-19 has led to lots of employees being laid off.
For economic industry in Malaysia, the CPI decrease in 2020 shows that the industry is struggling during the pandemic. The most affected industry is the transportation with negative 10%, while clothing and footwear have negative 0.8%. However, the communication service saw an increase of 1.1%, while food and beverage is 1.3% for their CPI. This shows that people more focusing on buying essential goods and services like the communication service and food and beverages.
My name is Nurul Nabiha Binti alias my matric number is A20A1878. My part is about economic policies implementation. There are two types of economic policy implementation, which is fiscal policy and monetary policy. Fiscal policy refers to the use of government spending and tax to influence economic condition, including aggregate demand for goods and service, employment, inflation, and economic growth. Fiscal policy measure employed by government to stabilize the economy, specifically by manipulating the level and allocation of tax and government expenditure. Fiscal policy is the most of crucial component of being able to govern the economy, especially in this COVID-19 pandemic season, because it has the potential to control the amount of output created, which is a gross domestic product. Monetary policy is a set of tools that country's central bank can use to encourage long-term economic growth by limiting the amount of money available to the country's bank, consumer, and enterprise. The central bank seeks to impact microeconomic parameters such as inflation, consumption rate, economic growth, and general liquidity by managing the money supply. The goal is to keep the economy moving at a steady pace that is neither too fast nor too slow. The central bank may raise borrowing interest rate to discourage expenditure or lower borrowing interest rate to encourage greater borrowing and spending. Fiscal policy in Malaysia. In terms of Malaysia's fiscal situation, the government has raised the deficit target for 2021 from 5.4% to 6% of GDP, taking into account ongoing measures from the 2020 economic stimulus package as well as the Permai and Pemerkasa package that we launched in the first quarter of this year. As a result, the entire federal government debt is predicted to remain around 62% by the end of 2021, while statutory debt is expected to rise from 58% in 2020 to 58.5% by the end of 2021. This is still less than the statutory debt maximum of 60%, which Parliament approved in August 2020. With more than 90% of government debt denominated in ringgit, the country's debt profile remains favorable, aided by sufficient domestic liquidity and long-term issuances that provide financial flexibility. The government is convinced that its budgetary approach will keep economic growth prospect robust in the medium to long term, allowing the country to meet its development goals and realize our shared prosperity vision. Monetary policy in Malaysia. On May 2021, the Monetary Policy Committee MPC of Bank Negara Malaysia decided to maintain the overnight policy rate OPR at 1.75%. Malaysia economic activity is expected to grow further in the first quarter and into April, according to the most of recent statistics. Inflation is expected to rise between 2.5% and 4.0% in 2021, due mostly the variable cost of increased global oil price. In terms of trajectory, the second quarter of 2021 is expected to see a temporary increase in headline inflation due to a low base from the low domestic retail fuel price in the same quarter of 2020. Due to the economic sustained spare capacity, underlying inflation, as measured by core inflation, is likely to remain low, averaging between 0.5% and 1.5% for the year. However, the prognosis is contingent on global oil and commodity price movement.
So, in conclusion, the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic towards Malaysia's economy has been quite surprised for the citizens. It leads people into poverty and lost their jobs. The economic growth also shows sign of decline as the value of Malaysian's ringgit dropped considerably during the pandemic. Import trades and domestic trades was halted, or in limited quantity during the uprising of the pandemic. As the year passed, the economy of Malaysia has shows sign of improvement, with the economic sectors slowly recover with the help of the government. So that's all from our groups. Thank you.